The Baltimore Ravens go crazy on day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft. We talk about their Mike Green and Emery Jones selections, what they bring to the table for Baltimore, as well as where they could go on day 3, and a recap so far of days 1 and 2. All that and more coming up on an instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We are here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this, well, now it is Saturday, but this Friday night, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where we are live right now. You can hit the like and subscribe button over there. If you're an audio listener, you can follow along and subscribe over there, as well as the same show, both audio and video. And I truly, truly appreciate both the video and audio communities that we have built up here on Locked On Ravens. We're a 5-day-a-week Baltimore Ravens podcast. So Monday through Friday, we have episodes for you, and then we go live after every piece of Ravens big news, like draft reactions like this one. We also go live after every single Ravens game and a lot of other fun things in store as we continue along the offseason. Today's episode, Locked On Ravens, is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free on LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Wow. I have no words. You know, the Ravens, you get 3 extremely talented football players in Malaki Starks, Mike Green, and Emery Jones. We're going to talk about Mike Green and Emery Jones here. Obviously, in the first part of the show, we'll go Mike Green, we'll go Emery Jones, we'll talk what they bring to the table. And then we'll talk about where the Ravens can go on day 3 and just an overall grade of what has happened so far for the Ravens. Obviously, I know Mike Green does come with his set of controversy. We will talk about Mike Green first on the field. Then we will address the off-field concerns as well, because both are important in telling the story of Mike Green. So, look, starting off with Mike Green, I'm ecstatic about this pick for the on-field aspect of it. You know, this is a guy that was, for a lot of people, a top 10 to 15 to 20 player in this class, a top 2 to 4 edge rusher in this class. The value at 59 is unbelievable. Now, obviously, the reasons that he fell, we will get into in a couple of minutes when we finish talking about him on the field. But Mike Green gives you everything that you need, or what the Ravens have been looking for, out of the edge position. He is extremely quick. He has an extreme first step. The get off is off the charts. He has a wide array of dominant pass rusher moves that are not only built for the NFL, but are built for a 10-plus year career of high-level NFL play. You can look at many highlights of Mike Green. His spin move is particularly devastating, but he has a pass rushing plan where he's able to counter and figure out guys throughout the game. His agility, his athleticism is there. His motor is the thing that everybody's going to keep talking about here. He works hard on the football field, and he's not just a one-trick pony in terms of pass rush. He is a very good player against the run. This is a guy that is shown the production. He led all of college football last year with 17 and a half sacks at Marshall. He's going to be an immediate contributor on this Ravens defense. And when you look at guys like Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, I'm not saying Mike Green is on that level right now, but the Ravens have been looking for that guy, that star. They're the only team that does not have one. I think Odafe Owe has become a really solid player for them, and he has improved almost every single season. A double-digit sack year is, of course, nothing to scoff at for Owe. Mike Green's ceiling on the field is absolutely sky high. Absolutely sky high. And I think that he has the potential to be the next great AFC North pass rusher if everything works out for him and he is able to reach his potential. And if you saw over on Locked On Ravens YouTube channel, Keith Sanchez, who's one of the guys who does Locked On NFL Draft, put a short out. We put a short out over there on the Locked On Ravens channel about Keith Sanchez breaking him down. And Keith says, look, this guy has superstar potential at the NFL level. Now, he has the quickness and the agility to figure things out as the NFL level starts to present itself to him. His hands are great. He can engage. And then if the offensive lineman puts his hands on him, he can rip down, he can swipe down and get away from that and maneuver around him. But I just think the thing, and I know a lot of people talk about Mike Green, well, where are the weaknesses? Where are the weaknesses? He could get a little bit stronger. I think strength, when you sometimes talk about him getting tied up with offensive linemen, that's something that happens sometimes. But he has so much twist and burst and get off. And, when watching the tape on Mike Green, this comparison is bad because of the player that because of the player that it was for the Ravens. But I think that he's just a much more juiced up and better Tim Williams. And I'm talking college tape. NFL-wise, Tim Williams was a disaster. But he has that burst and get off. Tim Williams in that college tape was one of the quickest tape I've ever seen in terms of a pass rusher. Mike Green has that in terms of his ability, but I think he also is bigger, stronger, and has an overall well-rounded game. And speaking of, I actually saw some comparisons to Sergio Kindle, obviously minus the whole stare situation, and who Sergio Kindle could have been coming out of Texas when Baltimore took him. But Green is a player that had no business falling to 59 on the field. Obviously, it wasn't about football, why he was available for the Ravens. There were questions about if he was there, if Baltimore would have actually done this and selected Mike Green. But he also has a super high football IQ. He understands angles really well. You can kind of see that on his tape. He's able to, especially in the run game, if he's trying to get back behind, if a running back bursts through the first level, Mike Green finds a way to try to work around his offensive lineman and get to a guy before a big run breaks. He wreaks havoc. He's able to keep his eyes in the backfield. He's a very disciplined football player as well. I know people look at him and say, okay, he was at UVA and then he went to Marshall. Where's the high-level competition? He had a game against Ohio State last season, and he had that viral spin move. I don't know if people saw it, but it's not like he played in the SEC or anything like that, but he still has tape against high-level schools, and it's not like he was washed out of the game in that tape. So I'm still kind of in shock that it happened. And again, part of the reason for that is it kind of goes against what Baltimore's been preaching over the last handful of years, but we'll get into that in a couple minutes in terms of Mike Green. Over the course of his career, again, transferred to Marshall after 2021 Virginia. 2023, he had 4.5 sacks, 17 sacks for Mike Green, 23 tackles for loss as well for Mike Green in 2024. He was absolutely dominant, 84 total tackles. This is a guy, now you feel so much better about your pass rushing. I mean, I feel beyond better. I don't know if there was a player in this draft that would have made me feel, obviously Abdul Carter, but like outside of him and maybe one other, there wasn't a guy that was going to make me feel so much better about the Ravens pass rush situation than Mike Green does. Now you can line him up. The good thing with Mike Green is he is a 3-down player. He is a 3-down player. Now, do they want to use him like that early in his career? I'm not sure. I think that they definitely can. But at the end of the day, Baltimore with Van Noy, Owe, and Mike Green, and even Tavius Robinson, who I expect to take a big leap, what was kind of what do they have there? Are they going to be able to get a contributor? Malaki Starks goes, and they're like, okay, they're really going to be an impact player. No way Mike Green falls with them. No way they take Mike Green. And here we are at 12:10 a.m. on April 26th. That's for day 2, talking about how Mike Green is your newest Baltimore Ravens pass rusher. Now, he had a message to Ravens fans after he was drafted about an hour or so after. He said, Ravens flock, watch what I do for y'all. So he is excited. I'm sure he has a chip on his shoulder. And, for Baltimore, it's an opportunity to find really good value. And you talk about value. If you've kept up with Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he has the Beast draft guide that comes out every year. It's one of the most respected draft guides in the entire industry. In his top 100, he had Malaki Starks as number 19 overall as 4th safety, and he was drafted 27th. Mike Green was his 10th overall player, 4th edge, and he was drafted 59th overall. So Baltimore's getting value after value after value. So I think that this was a great on-field pick for Baltimore, and we'll get back to that in a second. But again, the reason why he was available was because of the allegations that he faced both in high school and in college, assault allegations. Eric DeCosta was asked about these allegations because, again, kind of goes against what the Ravens have been preaching over the last handful of seasons. We now know with the Justin Tucker situation that there apparently was no zero tolerance policy. The Ravens were kind of acting like there was a zero tolerance policy, but there was never one in the first place. Eric DeCosta said that they thoroughly investigated the Mike Green situation, and they understand the severity of what those allegations were. He said that they have the best scouts in the NFL. They go to Virginia, they go to Marshall, and they investigated different incidents with players all the time. He said, we felt comfortable taking him. He said, quote, I think he's a talented player. We understand the severity of what these allegations were, of course, but doing our due diligence, we were comfortable with Mike. I personally spent 1.5 hours with him in my office. I think the best is yet to come with him. I'm glad we got him. He also mentioned that the overall mood from Mike Green's team was positive on the allegations, which I don't, there's a whole thing about, Mike Green's team saying something and Mike Green saying something, then outside people saying something. So, take that for what you will. The Ravens are showing that, again, like they said with Justin Tucker, it's on a case-to-case basis, which, again, does kind of go against what they've been parading around over the last couple of seasons. Once the Tucker situation hit, they changed their tune, and, we're still waiting on the NFL's investigation there. But Mike Green on the field, you can't question that. You can't question it, excuse me. And, Eric DeCosta continued to say, hey, it was an exhaustive, interview, investigation process. He said, quote, we made the decision on what we thought was fair. So we'll see. But again, that is part of Mike Green's story here. Mike Green said at the combine that there, were the allegations against him, and, no questions, no this, no that for what Mike Green had to say. But they felt comfortable enough to take him. And if everything does check out, clearly Baltimore was comfortable. We'll kind of see how they navigate that situation and the Tucker situation as the offseason continues. But look, there's no question that Baltimore got one of the best players in this entire draft in round 2. It is by far the steal of the draft. There's no question about it. I don't care where Shedeur Sanders gets taken, although that's a whole different conversation. I think teams don't really value Shedeur based off where he's falling. But there's no doubt Mike Green on the field is the best pick. And by the way, for everybody who was in here last night complaining about the trenches, I understood it, but I said, just stay patient. Just stay patient. There are still picks to go, right? Things are still going to unfold. The Ravens still have 10 picks. Malaki Starks was 1. Now they have to turn to their actual need, at least the one that I thought was the biggest, which is in the trenches. And they get both Mike Green and they get Emery Jones. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll, of course, continue our Mike Green conversation, but we'll also dive into Emery Jones and what his role could be and if he could challenge for a starting job on day 1. So be sure to stay tuned. We have a lot coming your way here on this Instant Reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means it's time to hire, and you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. LinkedIn is the place to go. That's why our LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. You can post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions, then quickly get a job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher instantly reacting to day 2 of the NFL draft. Baltimore goes crazy, selecting Mike Green out of Marshall, the edge, and Emery Jones, the offensive lineman, out of LSU. Appreciate everybody for being here. We will have a bonus episode coming out at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I guess later today, technically. So at about 5.5-ish hours, we're going to break this down even more, talk about where the Ravens could go on day 3, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more as the show goes on here tonight. I think that, again, Mike Green on the field, you cannot find better value. It's honestly probably one of the biggest steals in the last couple of years in terms of drafts. I know Kyle Hamilton is also along those lines, but you're talking about a guy that was a top 10 guy without the off-field stuff. And honestly, with the on-field stuff, he was still in the conversation of like top 15, top 20. We're going to see what that all looks like. But obviously, when it comes to Mike Green, the reason he was available for Baltimore at 59 was the allegations that he faced. Now, apparently, teams took Mike Green off their board with the allegations. And even if they felt comfortable with them. They had him off their board because him putting himself in bad situations like that apparently just turned teams off to him. So the Ravens, I guess, are able to get him there for that reason. But I mean, you have so many people just in awe that the Ravens were able to secure him. And again, it just feels like a Ravens pick on the field. Off the field, it's a little different, but the Ravens are clearly sending messages about what they want from their players and what they are tolerating with, that whole situation. Let's get into Emery Jones. Emery Jones goes at 91 to Baltimore, offensive lineman out of LSU. There were a couple of picks, or I guess a couple of guys that I would have probably preferred over Emery Jones. I still like the pick. Like, I think that Emery to me was a late 3, early 4 in terms of where I could see him going. So this kind of tracks with where he was about projected to go, in my opinion. I see Emil talking about, sort of for some reason, the Ravens liked Emery Jones over Charles Grant. And I see Jeff saying that Marcus Bowe would have been the pick. I would have preferred both those guys, honestly, over Emery Jones, but I still think this is a fine selection. With Emery Jones, he was a highly touted prospect last season, obviously fell a little bit over the course of this year in 2024, got burnt a lot over the course of the year this past season. He plays out of control at times a little bit. His fluidity when it comes to redirecting is tough as well, but he's a very strong offensive lineman, stands around about 6 foot-ish, 300 or 6'5", 6'5", 315. I don't know where I got 6 foot from. He's 6'5", like 315, 34.25-inch arms. The Ravens, when Eric DeCosta was talking about Emery Jones, he talked about how they actually plan to see him more as a swing tackle at this point, but might actually try to kick him inside the guard. So I guess this doesn't have too much bearing on where the Ravens actually go with their guard position. I would maybe anticipate Baltimore taking one more offensive lineman. Maybe it is Marcus Bowe in the 4th round if he stays, because it seems like while the Ravens will try Emery Jones at guard, feels like they view him maybe as their next Patrick McCary, who obviously is now in Jacksonville. Speaking of Jacksonville, they took Wyatt Milum out of West Virginia, 2 picks before Baltimore. Maybe it was 2 or 4 picks before Baltimore did. And I would have loved to see Wyatt Milum in Baltimore. I think that would have been like an A+ all the way across the board. I give Emery Jones probably like a B. Mike Green on the field, obviously it's an A+. There's no doubt about that. And I feel like Baltimore has done a really, really good job. And Aiden, hey, look, we even got Steelers fans in here. Appreciate you checking in, Aiden. He says Steelers fans here. Maybe you guys should have drafted Milroto back up. Lamar is so athletic and great draft overall. Well, I appreciate that. I think there's one thing we can agree on. Well, first of all, Cooper Rush is already the backup, so it wasn't very likely they were going to take they weren't going to take a backup quarterback. But I think we can both agree Bengals have had the worst draft out of all these AFC. Ravens and Steelers have a lot of made up pretty well. I think the Steelers have done a good job. If I had to rank AFC North drafts, I think it would probably be Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and then Cincinnati. I have no idea what Cincinnati's doing. I liked the guard they took, but first couple rounds for Cincinnati was pretty awful. So I think for Emery Jones, some of the stuff you like about Emery Jones is, I mentioned the fact that he is strong. He was a guy that was highly touted coming out of high school and was a 4-star prospect on NFL radars, and he's been reliable. He has been a great player for LSU. He has natural ability. I think with his length, his grip, and the fact that he has a high motor, it can really help Baltimore if they do want a swing tackle type of player, someone who can play a game or two if somebody goes down. I mentioned his balance, his out of controlness. That is definitely that's a weakness for him that hopefully, working with George Warhop in that offensive line, they'll be able to correct a little bit of that over the course of the first couple of years. I wouldn't expect him to start. There's a possibility, and especially maybe as training camp goes on and they feel like maybe he could kick inside, I'm sure they might experiment with that, especially over the course of the preseason and training camp. But he's able to stay square in the run game, which I think is really important, especially in this Baltimore offense. And he's able to use his pad level to his advantage and opponent's pad level to his advantage. And the good thing about him is he just has that dog. Like, all these picks have that dog in them, man. And I truly, I know people say, oh, ha, ha, ha. But no, legitimately, Emery Jones looks for contact. He seeks out contact, right? That is, in my opinion, the tone that Baltimore is trying to set here. You can see multiple clips of Emery Jones finishing through plays, finishing just down on guys, and even him playing with a bit of swagger to him. There's a clip of him kind of shaking his head at one of his guys who's rushing him and then throwing a punch into shoulder pad. He plays with that energy, that intensity. And that, to me, is what I like about this class so far, because Malaki Starks, Mike Green, and Emery Jones on the field all play with intensity. All are very high motor guys. All play through the whistle and give 110%. That is what playing like a Raven is on the field. And, over the last handful of seasons, there have been times in Baltimore where, the Ravens have some of those dudes, but you're like, man, where are those Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs days on defense? Or in the, Marshall Yanda and that intensity, right? I think Tyler Linderbaum certainly shows that. Ronnie Stanley has that in him. Roger Rosengarten has shown that. But, you're kind of wondering, man, the Ravens, they need that dog back. And they've done that with both Emery Jones and Mike Green here on day 2. Malaki Starks in round 1 as well. I just think, to me, where Emery Jones is another area that I've kind of identified for him is he's not a perfect prospect, but if he can continue to maintain a strong base in his blocks where he's not overcompensating as much with some of his physical gifts, I think that will make him a more balanced player. So in my estimation, again, I would have an open competition at guard, in my opinion. Even if the Ravens think he's a swing tackle, I would try to get him just in that competition. Voorhees, Falele, Emery Jones, get a competition going. But in my estimation, I feel like unless they take a Marcus Bowe or Charles Grant slips to them and they take back-to-back offensive linemen, I don't like saying this, but my prediction is that Falele and Voorhees are probably your starting guards. And that scares me. It worries me. Lamar deserves, more protection than that, in my opinion. I just again, Falele had good moments last year, but his bad moments were very loud and cost the Ravens games. Voorhees is a wild card. He could be awesome. He could not be. So I just think that, if the Ravens decide to have Emery Jones as their super sixth offensive lineman, might be a little tough to get Lamar that interior protection. But, if that's the case, hopefully Falele and Voorhees can improve. And I guess that's what we're banking on if the Ravens don't start Emery Jones at this point. But coming up in the final part of the show, we will continue diving into the Ravens draft as well as where they could go on day 3. Coming up in about 12, now actually less than 12 hours, the Ravens have 8 picks on day 3. Who's still available? Where could they go? And plus, more Mike Green, Malaki Starks, Emery Jones content as well. Plus, we'll do grades. Stay tuned. A lot coming your way here on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props from 3-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Nuggets didn't play last night, or I guess tonight, but technically last night because we're recording this here live at 12:25. If you bet the Clippers last night on FanDuel on Friday or Thursday, you are living large on FanDuel. If you bet the Nuggets, well, that probably wasn't a great night for you over on FanDuel. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher rocking out with you on this Friday night / Saturday morning as the Ravens secure Mike Green at pick 59 and Emery Jones at pick 91 to add on to Malaki Starks, who they got at pick number 27. Man, it's been an awesome 2 nights of the draft so far. You can, of course, like and subscribe here in video form on YouTube and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage, plus our live shows. We go live after every Ravens game and every piece of big news. As I mentioned, we will be having a bonus episode coming out tomorrow, 6 a.m. Eastern time, about more Ravens draft talk, and then we will be live after the Ravens, probably about 30 minutes after the draft concludes. We'll wait for some undrafted free agents to trickle in because we know the Ravens love that. About 30 minutes or so after the draft concludes on Sunday or Saturday. Today I'm getting my days mixed up. On Saturday, we will be going live again and just breaking everything down. So Mike Green, again, as I've talked about, unbelievable player for the Ravens on the field. I think that in the next 5 years, he will be the best pass rusher in the AFC North. And obviously that is assuming Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, all those guys retire. But Mike Green has that superstar potential, and I think that he's going to be, Baltimore's next superstar. Emery Jones has the potential to be a really solid, whether it's high-level backup or starter at the next level. There's a lot of potential there, especially with him being so highly touted. Some of the measurements that he has, his athletic profile, and just the motors that these guys play with. I think it's really, really exciting. So I just think that for me, now you look ahead to day 3 a little bit. Safety is in the books. You could maybe add another edge guy if you wanted to, although the Ravens already have a lot of edge guys on their roster. An updated look at the edge room, by the way, for Baltimore. Calvin, Noy, Adafe Owe, Mike Green, Tavius Robinson, David Ajabo, and Adisa Isaac. I'm not sure David Ajabo makes the roster. We're going to see. We're going to find out. At the offensive line spot, I could certainly see them adding another one there. You can look at maybe a later round running back, potentially, although that would probably mean they move on from Rasheen Ali. I'd probably see them double dipping a defensive line on day 3. There's certainly enough guys on the interior to warrant that, especially with 8 picks. I think wide receiver, I know Ty Felton, again, just Vikings ruining my dreams with Maryland receivers. Ty Felton goes last pick of the 3rd round to the Vikings, so we can all, unfortunately say goodbye to that. And then, Rick, I see you saying right here, I do think the Ravens draft a kicker. I think that one of those picks will be one, and we will just see. If it's not a kicker, it'll be an undrafted free agent, but we will see. And I see Emil here worried EDC was going to double dip with Xavier Watts. He's such a good player. I wouldn't have minded it, but I still think that you can't really justify with the players that were on the board going with 2 safeties when you do need trench help, and they should probably double dip at offensive line here on day 3. And honestly, wouldn't be shocked if they added another edge as well. So look, I think the biggest need for Baltimore now is on the interior and defensive line. Michael Pierce retires. Brent Urban is no longer with the team. Broderick Washington really hasn't done a lot for you since that extension. So I think that you kind of look at guys available for day 3. And I had my little cheat sheet here. I got to pull it back up. But there are a lot of guys that could be available for Baltimore, including another Maryland guy, which is Jordan Phillips. But, if you want to look at some of the other defensive linemen in this class, and if you want to double dip, maybe Jack Sawyer on the edge could make some sense. Maybe he's a bigger player. So, we would see there. Sawyer's a big dude, standing at right around 6'4", 260. So maybe Baltimore sees him more as like a defensive lineman as opposed to a pure edge guy. We'll see. I saw a comment earlier. I can't remember who said it, so I apologize about Shedeur Sanders. If he falls enough, should they take him? I don't think so. I really just don't think it's a valuable way to spend their asset. I mean, I think it's crazy how far Shedeur is falling, but unless they feel like they could get a trade for him, or because again, I don't think Shedeur, I think he has a shot to start at the next level. Like, again, it doesn't seem like a lot of teams feel that way, but I think he has the talent to. There's not a role for him in Baltimore. Like, he'd be a career backup until Lamar Jackson retires, and that's not what, he wants, or I think what's best for Baltimore. So I'd rather spend their draft capital elsewhere. I really do like Marcus Bowe. I feel like they could double dip there. I wouldn't be shocked if a corner also is on the board for them. Maybe a Kobe Bryant out of Kansas. I really like him. Jabbar Muhammad out of Oregon's been getting some buzz, so maybe he in the 4th round could be an option. Jalen Royals is a wide receiver out of Utah State. I can see them taking Nick Nash out of San Jose State. It's another guy that they could maybe go after here. There are options. I mean, there are guys that really fit the bill for what Baltimore wants here. Braden Swinson, an edge guy, if they really wanted to go with him. I think that the Ravens, though, if there's a guy that starts to fall, maybe it's a Charles Grant or a Marcus Bowe or one of those guys, I think Baltimore should explore trading up. I don't think that 8 day 3 picks are going to make Baltimore's roster. They didn't lose a lot, and they just don't have enough roster space, in my opinion. So that's another guy that could be an option. In game, I see Savion Williams went to the Packers in round 3. He would have been a big bodied option that I would have liked for Baltimore, but he is gone. Are you right? Charles Grant went to the Raiders, right? Didn't he? I forget. I was doing all this coverage, and I forgot that Charles Grant actually went. So, yes, Charles Grant is gone. So I was talking about Marcus and Bowe. You can scratch the Charles Grant thing. I guess I just really wanted him to be a Raven. So that's where that is. I see a Ravens third ring saying CJ West, another guy that could be a solid option on the defensive line. Dante Thornton, a speedster out of Tennessee, that could be an option as well. I think Anais Peebles could be solid for them. JJ Pegues, who profiles to Patrick Ricard, could be good. But I want to bring up this point here from Rick. Well, first, actually, Maximilian is saying that Swinson is pretty decent. I wouldn't mind if they double dip there. Rick saying that things couldn't have fallen much better. I 100% agree with this. I understand that there was a run on edge, and I jinxed that. I'm going to put the blame on me. Hand up. That's on me. I said the draft was falling perfectly, and then like 5 edge guys went in a row or something like crazy. Or maybe it was like 4 out of the next 5 were edge defensive line guys. That was on me. But for the most part, it was, okay, tight ends are going in the second round. Quarterbacks are getting taken off the board. Running backs are going. Like the way that the Ravens have given themselves positional freedom and don't have to worry. Because again, you can just go with best player available. If the Ravens badly needed an offensive lineman, like bad to the point if they didn't take a guy in the second round, it would have been a disaster. They couldn't have taken Mike Green because, well, you got to draft an offensive lineman or else all the guys you want are maybe off the board. But because you have that positional freedom, a guy who is just, falling to you for off-field concerns and you feel comfortable enough with your background, well, then you can take that guy and you can figure out the rest later. You take talent, figure out the rest later. If the medicals check out, if there are off-field allegations and those check out, and clearly Baltimore feels comfortable with them, then you take the talent and you figure it out later. So I still am. I've said it like probably 10 times for this show. The fact that the Ravens actually did draft Mike Green is, again, it's different. It's different than what we saw. Joe's asking, why do you think they went with Mike Green over Landon Jackson? SEC guy over Marshall guy. And for those that don't know, Zach Bollinger, who's part of the Ryan Rippin show, big Marshall guy. Why do I think they went Mike Green over Landon Jackson? I just think Green's the better player, and it's not really close. I mean, I think Landon Jackson has a lot of potential, a lot of upside, but it just kind of came down to if the Ravens were comfortable with the allegations. And clearly they were. Clearly they felt good enough to take him, and everything checked out in their eyes. But, the difference between Mike Green and Landon Jackson right now as players is unbelievably, it's a big difference. And not that Landon Jackson can't get there, Joe, but the Ravens also need instant impact players. And I think that while Landon could have contributed for them, I don't think we see him a lot because he went to the Bills, if I'm remembering. You're not going to get the instant impact from Landon Jackson that you're going to from Mike Green. I mean, Mike Green was a top 10 player in the class for some people. Like you could see him going in mocks, maybe to like San Fran 11. They took Mykal Williams out of Georgia. Like, he gives you instant impact both as a pass rusher and as a run defender. It's like Malaki Starks and Mike Green as safe picks. And I don't say safe picks as like, oh, they don't have a high ceiling, because that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there are not a lot of weaknesses in Malaki Starks' game. Shout out to Sam Njoku for popping in, and he won the Malaki Starks versus Nick Eamon battle. I concede, although look, I still love Malaki as a prospect, so I'm still ecstatic with the pick. But you have two guys that have very high ceilings, but their floors are also extremely high. And that's what the Ravens need. We had the conversation. Sam and I talked about it. Kadri Ismail and I talked about it, where you needed instant impact immediate players in these first 2 rounds. Get the production that you got out of a guy like Nate Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten last season. Now you have the opportunity to do that same thing with Malaki Starks and Mike Green. So I think that, especially with the Senior Bowl that he had, there's that video of him. If you haven't seen it, I posted it up on social media. Him like springboarding Josh Conerly, who was a first-round pick, like just plowing through him. So I just, I'm still in shock. I mean, look, if you have to give a grade to Baltimore in their draft, I'd give it an A. I guess maybe the only reason it's not an A+ is because I would have probably taken a couple other guys over Emery Jones, but I still like the Emery Jones pick. I'd probably give the Emery Jones pick a probably B+, A-. Mike Green and Malaki Starks. I mean, Malaki is probably an A for me, and Mike Green's an A+, all with their on-field stuff taken into account there. So I give this draft an A for Baltimore. And I see this point here from Flagship. Kevin, the Ravens had a great opportunity to capitalize on the board in round 3. I think they missed. Milum was there. There's a few picks in front of us. The UGA interior guys are right there as well. We have 11. I agree. And that's part of the reason why it's not an A+ for me, is because I think that both Tate Ratledge and Wyatt Milum went, I think, Detroit traded up with Denver at 87, and then Jacksonville took Milum at 89. So Ratledge 87 and Milum 89. Those two would have been home run picks. And it's kind of the same thing that happened last season where Baltimore had an option to take like Dominic Puny out of Kansas, and they didn't do it because they didn't get aggressive with their picks. I don't think 11 picks are going to make the roster. I've said that many times. I've said that on the show. I just think that the Ravens could have been aggressive with that. And that's something I talked about on this morning show and our reaction last night. They could have moved up. They could have gotten one of those guys. Those two players are instant impact year one starters. You know, that was an easy, hey, you put him over Falele or Voorhees with Ratledge and Milum. Emery Jones is much more of a swing tackle, super sub offensive lineman to start. Maybe he can start a guard. So there's not as much immediate impact upside for Emery Jones. I still think Emery Jones can be a good player, but it's not the impact that a Tate Ratledge or a Wyatt Milum would have had. So, you know, I get it. I get it. It was tough to see that happen, especially when you're so close to those guys. But I guess it is what it is. I just wish they would have maybe learned from their mistakes last season. And yeah, Anthony, I talked about this too. I don't think they do draft Shedeur if he falls to the 6th round. I don't think it's a good use of the draft picks. I mean, we've seen Baltimore use their 6th round picks and draft contributors. Not that Shedeur is not a good player. I think he's fallen too far, but they already have Cooper Rush. I don't, and plus this wouldn't be a good situation, I think, for Shedeur because he wants to go to a place where he can compete in Baltimore. It's not going to be he'd be a career backup. So with Baltimore. So we'll see. But that's all I have for here today on Locked On Ravens. Appreciate everybody for tuning in on this live instant reaction edition of the show. Again, we'll be back here tomorrow, 6 a.m. Eastern time with a bonus episode diving into even more detail on Mike Green, Emery Jones, and of course, Malaki Starks. Plus, we're going to dive into who the Ravens can select on day 3 a little more as well. So on the way, hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form as well. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.